Yay! And so we are on Facebook Live, and this is the F Show, talking about films in particular with two very generous but very accomplished people, one sitting in Johannesburg and the other sitting in the US. And I'm going to allow my guests to introduce themselves. But before that, just to say that this F Show is in partnership with Tropics, the Tropics Business Summit, where we're really looking at film as a business, film as an industry. How can we monetize film? I think that is really important. So I'll come to you immediately, Chike. I know that it's really very late or very early for you, and I thank you for being with us. You look bright and fresh, so you're not too tired. Welcome, Chike.
Yeah, thanks. It's good to see you, and it's good to be here. Yeah, my name is Chike Wofia. I am based in Silicon Valley in the San Francisco Bay Area. I run the Silicon Valley African Film Festival, and we just wrapped up this last weekend our 11th anniversary of the film festival, and that's what we do. And I think as we go into the conversations and begin to unpack some of the premise for these conversations, I think it would be interesting to touch on a few details. But just first and foremost, the reason we started the film festival in the first place, right here in the heart of Silicon Valley, the creativity and technology capital of the world, is it's a very simple thing. And for those of us, we just believe that for far too long, our stories as Africans, both in the continent and the diaspora, our stories have been told by people and continue to be told by people that are so far removed from our realities. And these single lens narratives have created historical distortions, blurred perceptions, blurred interpretations of us as Africans. And so we felt that if the storytellers are removed from our realities and continue to be removed from our realities, they're going to continue telling these stories from a warped lens. And we wanted to give African storytellers, content creators, a platform to share Africa's story with the world, starting right here in Silicon Valley and outwards. And so that's what we've been doing. And you know, it started as a very humble film festival, but I'm happy to say that it's really grown into something that's very successful over the years.
And you're right in the heart of it all. I think in terms of image and Hollywood, you know, just how people think and view anything outside of the US. So that must have been quite a hard task in the beginning, I would think. And congratulations.
Well, yeah. Well, yes. I mean, I think we can go into all of that as we continue the conversations. But it's really, you know, the dominant narrative of Africa is an Africa that is painted as Africa that is desolate. Africa is always on its knees, begging, diseased, everything else, to show Africa and Africans as less than. And you and I do know that that's not the Africa that we know and come from. And so it's, you know, it gets ridiculously annoying at a certain point. I've been in Silicon Valley for 33 years. And so to encounter this over and over, and I've been on the faculty of the college where I was teaching African history and having all of that stuff happen. And so there's only so much you can scream and shout about it, but you have to get up and do something. And I felt that if the narrative structure and the stories about our people is the thing that is creating this warped, warped perceptions, that perhaps we could use the same narrative structure and films and all of that and images to begin to tell our stories ourselves and showcase that. And you know, so that's really what it is. It's a challenge day by day, but it's one mind at a time.
Yep, absolutely. Cisco Liso, we love your work and we love what you do and we love that you win awards everywhere. And you know exactly what Chika's talking about is this warped view. But you have, you know, having won BAFTAs, having won everywhere. Tell us how you have managed to tell the African story in the way that you do.
You know, it's it's very challenging. It's constant. It's money, 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 money. Show me the money. You know what? I just think that maybe I'm just fortunate. I mean, I don't want to think that I'm exceptional or anything, to be quite honest, because we are making films, we're not curing cancer. And part of it has been that I've just been really tenacious. And but one of the things that I think is paramount to Black people having a voice and owning or creating wealth, because we actually don't get paid that much. When our broadcasters are failing us, and partly because the truth of the matter, you see, people like saying Africa is corrupt. We are seeing what's happening in America with the elections. Those people are doing it so corrupt. Do you know what I'm trying to say? It's fascinating how they are excluding voters and how they are finding ways. That's just, from the usual textbook that they say that's Africa, that's who we are. But I think the most important thing is really for African filmmakers to own their copyright. Copyright is such an important thing. And one of the things that we need to do as African filmmakers is to delay gratification. If there is the possibility of you being paid 10 million, as opposed to you being paid 1 million and owning your copyright, get paid 1 million and own your copyright. Why Oprah Winfrey is so powerful is because she owns the talk show. She owns, and when she did a deal, when she first started doing the talk show, she had the option of owning less, of earning less, and owning the same thing that you've got Lucas owning the copyright for his series, So that's really, really first and foremost where the money is. We must delay gratification and we must own copyright. And where I've been very fortunate is that I think also another thing is I have been very focused in terms of the type of films that I want to tell. Women, children, social justice. I am not interested in doing many things. I don't want to be, I get offered sometimes to do dramas and this and that, and then people say, but you can make money. I'm not good at that. Let people who are good at that do that. Let me do what I'm good at. Let me improve my skill. Let me hone my skill. And that's the only way I will get better. But documentary is the poor cousin of film. But what is interesting now with COVID, documentary is the way to go. So documentary filmmakers need to come together, monetize documentary. It is easier to film documentary right now. It's fewer people. You can do the COVID, PP, all of that safety. So I think that it's an opportunity for us documentary filmmakers to work now as opposed to big budget films and filmmaking. So there is also another opportunity. The other issue as well is that I think that you said, how do I do it? I actually don't know. I just love what I do and I just continue doing it, and I just get better at it. But also I have a genuine interest of what is happening on the continent and Black people. As a South African, I don't believe that life begins and ends in South Africa. If you were to ask me about how the African continent liberated South Africa, I can tell you right now that Nigeria's oil was nationalized and it is still suffering from that. The same thing happened in Zambia and all of that. So as an African, I have to have an interest in the rest of the continent to begin with. And at the moment, yesterday, I was watching a documentary by a Nigerian brother, a 6-part documentary series on the history of, he's a lawyer, this guy. But of course, he is so intelligent and he's a Niger. So Nigers, they can just do anything. And he's done this documentary series, I think the document, and he's going to run for governor. He wants to be the governor of Lagos. But I also love the fact that, film documentary should not be in the preserve of just filmmakers. I'm doing a film festival where I have just partnered with the University of Mandela University in Port Elizabeth, because my festival is a gender film festival, but I wanted it to be feminist. So a lot of people who are sitting on the panels are not filmmakers. They are feminists. They are, you know what I mean? So how do I don't know, but I just love what I do, and I just keep hacking. But I own most of my copyright, and that has given me a certain sense of confidence. So I don't make much money when I'm doing the work because I choose to own the copyright. But I know that when I'm dead and gone, my family, my daughter, or whoever I choose to bequeath my estate to, maybe it will be the feminist movement, there will be money that will be made, the monetization of money. And that for me is the key. Black people, Black creators need to you know what I mean, to delay gratification and own copyright. And I think that is where the power and the money is.
Welcome, Nadia, from the National Association of Broadcasters. I'm sorry we had some technical challenges. So what we could do is, I'm just checking with Justine. If you see me looking down, it's because I'm looking at my phone to make sure that she has the slides ready for you, Nadia. But as we do that, let's just welcome you. We spoke to Chike, who's sitting in Silicon Valley and has just completed an amazing film festival. He's been there for 33 years, and he's trying to change the narrative of Africa. And this is what Kaliswa does, what you've been doing. This is really our mantra. So welcome, and please just give us some idea from the broadcasting perspective. I know that we're based in South Africa, but you have an overview of what is going on and how COVID has impacted the way that broadcasters are dealing with content.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here, and so sorry about the tech issues. Great to see you all, and I'm just so inspired listening to Xoliswa about copyright and ownership. And I think that's absolutely, you know, what we should be concentrating a lot of our energies on within the entire continent. And Chikwe, I mean, I think that's great that you're sitting all the way out in the USA. What we are seeing, of course, is as COVID hit us, how the entire globe, for one moment, we all paused for well, it's been months for us in lockdown, that we all are absolutely immersed in dealing with exactly the same challenges across the board, no matter where we're living. And in South Africa, of course, you know, stark realities of inequality, you know, the things that are happening, of course, around Black Lives Matter, the issues that have just been raised now, also about feminist movements, about the role of women. I think if anything, now is the time to the earlier point made around documentary, around content that is educational, informative, engaging, and of course, you know, great storytelling. And we can tell these stories in many different formats. And I think that's what we've seen. We certainly, right now, the world's become these Zoom screens, haven't they? And we've certainly seen opportunities for great collaboration and great partnerships. And we're able to get online, you know, if it's affordable, to be able to do that kind of exchange. We've seen incredible from music to kind of, you know, the rage right now with young people around TikTok, etc. But it's about how we're able to get onto platforms where we can afford them and engage in a very different way. So I think the kind of traditional way of looking at media has shifted dramatically because COVID has forced us all to get online. And I think the real concern, of course, is about who's owning the content that's being produced. And I hope that, you know, people have the opportunity to have further, deeper discussions about that. But if you wanted me just to flip through the very early experience of what happened in South Africa, certainly around how broadcasters responded. And we did some research at the very early few weeks of the lockdown in South Africa. And the research we did was just with 20 of our commercial broadcasting stations, radio stations. And I think for those in South Africa will be very aware how the entire broadcasting industry just rose to the challenge, and people just got onto, finding ways to collaborate, to give airtime to NGOs, more airtime to government, more airtime certainly around educational awareness building, etc. So we did a quick snapshot survey. 20 of our commercial stations participated in that survey. What we obviously found was that these stations broadcast across the country. We estimate that there are 58 million people in South Africa. Commercial radio during that early time, and these were just 20 stations, managed to access more than 30% of South Africa in terms of coverage. And that was a lockdown period from 26th March to 8th May. We can go to the next slide. What we did find during this time is that more people were listening to the radio, and they were listening for longer. Similarly, we saw more people watching television, as we saw more people getting online, of course. And people felt that radio really gave them a sense of community, to be in touch with the world, with the community. They felt more connected with their communities because we were in that hard lockdown. Remember, we couldn't leave our homes. We could only go and get food or medicines. Schools were shut, work had ceased. The production sector had to shut down, concerns around the spreading of the disease. And please remember, in those early days, we lost colleagues, we lost friends, we lost people working in this industry at the cold face of all of this. Broadcasting continued, people were in studio carrying on, providing the news, providing entertainment, and we were still learning in that very early period. Thankfully, we know so much more. And people were very frustrated that they couldn't go out and make the content that is so needed. But that was a specific time, and we had to understand that. So we saw that there was a great trust in traditional broadcasting, radio and television. People looked and listened out to radio and television. During that period, it was a great, as I said, collaboration also with different organizations, with government. In South Africa, being a regulated broadcasting industry, we had to ensure that broadcasters provided what they call public service announcements. There was a great push to assist government, certainly around, matric learning, particularly school learners. Broadcasters were able to give more airtime across platforms, radio, television, and also their online streams that they have. We can go to the next slide. These are just averages of the kinds of minutes that were dedicated to public service announcements, etc. There were great opportunities, as I said, for us to continue to learn and to engage with World Health Organization, Department of Health, and more than 72,000 public service announcements went out just in that first few weeks. And again, I stress, this was just 20 commercial radio stations that we surveyed. South Africa has more than 230 community stations, and we have the public broadcast, the SABC as well. You can flip through. Thank you, Justine. What also happened, of course, as I said, is there was an overwhelming, incredible, sense of camaraderie, of solidarity. I'm sure you're familiar with the rollout of food parcels, of PPEs, of finding ways to connect with communities. Broadcasters found ways to support local businesses. They helped more than 500 businesses during that period. We did a whole campaign on gender-based violence, because sadly, that spiked not only in South Africa, but globally, where we saw the lockdown and its negative impact on women in particular, and young children who are already in such difficult circumstances. And so, broadcasters ran a campaign specifically around gender-based violence, again, in support of government's efforts. Local content and putting out more local music. And remember, this is a time when advertising went all the way down. Nobody was advertising. You couldn't go and shop. So although that plummeted, there was a huge support on the side of broadcasters to put out a lot more, certainly in music, on radio, a lot more local music, finding ways to collaborate, finding ways to get people on air continuously. A lot of relief funds that went through to communities, as I mentioned before, and certainly, the sense of building a nation. So there were campaigns around our anthem, and there were opportunities just to make us feel connected. We were all in this together, and we still are all in this together. And then you can go to the next slide. One of the campaigns we ran was, while we can't hold hands, we can hold hearts. And this was really the push around the anthem, which was every Friday on the first few weeks of lockdown at 1 o'clock, where every station put out the anthem. And that was a really nice, spirited way of getting, as I said, people to understand that this is something we're all having to, come together on and do the right thing. The next slide. I think it might be just, that was the radio campaign that we did on gender-based violence. It was called turn down your radio. Imagine a radio saying, turn down your radio. Whereas we're turning down the sound and listening out for the cries of help, but acting, doing something actively, make those calls, make sure that, whether there were specific messages that could be passed through where people really need help and they were in need. And this was really to support government's initiatives as well. We can go to the next slide. You can play the clip if you want to, but that's fine because I know I joined late. So
We can play the clip if it plays.
yeah.
Okay.
If it's, it might not be active, I'm not sure.
Let's just try.
Thanks. But it really, I mean, I think that, colleagues on this call, it's difficult now. We're 7 months into our lockdown, almost 8 months, but those first 6 weeks were extremely challenging, hey? And I think that, I think the clip might work now. Let's have a look. To see how the media, and these were just the stations that participated in that survey. Those were just their logos. So you might know some of them. They cut across different genres and certainly different age groups. It's very intergen, the kind of radio stations that participated in this. So I'll stop there. But I do think that, what we have seen, as I said, is a sense of, a real genuine sense of coming together and finding opportunities and recognizing that we need to put out credible information. In South Africa, it's obviously a criminal offense to put out disinformation, misinformation around COVID in particular. So what's happened is audiences, citizens, people have turned to traditional media. Remember that broadcasters have to go through editorial, that they're properly licensed, so they cannot put out information that is not verified. But I think on the entertainment front, it's been very exciting. And we now see, as we move into lockdown 1, as restrictions have lowered and people start emerging into, making great content. We know that Hollywood totally shut down, similarly to the rest of the world. And we're all finding new ways to work in this new environment until a vaccine is found, until there's a cure. The reality is we're going to have to mask up, we're going to have to social distance, and I'm sure for creatives like yourselves, it makes for very interesting times to be developing content.
Thank you, Nadia. I think that was important just to sketch what is going on. And I think it resonates globally because the industry had to rethink. I think we have a clip of Kaliswa's film. We were looking for it. You know how we love your films. So we'll just show a small clip. Thank you. I hope that you had sound because I didn't have sound, but I think it's always my Wi-Fi that goes a bit funny. Sis Koliswa, talk to us about, I mean, you've told us about your passion and your love, and to see Uncle Kathy there, you know, to see stalwarts there is just something that's always, you know, kind of gets our hearts and our heartstrings.
What do you want me to say? Next time you must use other films. I know you love this one.
Did you make money?
I did not. No. Hang on. Okay. I am beginning to make money. When this commission came out, the problem as well is that you get very little money to make films and I get that. I'm not complaining, but I needed a lot of archive and all of that. And you know, archive, it's strange. Archive from the BBC and ITN is cheaper than archive from the SABC. I've never understood that. Never understood that. So I had to raise it. What I did was that I did the film for the commission. Did it finish, gave them the film. I did not like the film. So I raised additional money, went back and remade the film, the one that you see now, with more archive, and it's a bit longer. So I didn't make money in terms of the money that I was given to make the film. I wanted a good product, but I own the copyright. And so I have a distributor, you know, Women Make Movies. They are in the US, they distribute my films. And the American colleges are very, very active in terms of getting films and all of that. And sometimes they can get your film on Showmax and, you know, you get maybe 20,000 US, you know. So if you own your film and you didn't make much money while you were boss, I put the money into the film, the budget wasn't great, you can make residual earnings for years and years. That happened with my very first documentary called Shouting Silent. It was picked up by Women Make Movies. This was in 2000. It was shown on Showmax. And then it was bought by universities throughout the US. For every 6 months, I was getting a check for a good 12 years. Even now and again, I'll get a check from them. Do you know what I mean? The universities buy the film maybe for 200, 250 US, and then, you know, they take their percentage and then they give me, but you've got so many, you know, so in that regard, yes. But in terms of making copious amounts of money, no. And it's okay because it is a start. The start is owning your copyright. There are certain jobs that I don't own my copyright when I am a producer for hire or whatever. And I don't have a problem with that, but I need to be paid very well to do that. You know, in Nigeria, they've got a saying which says, if you're going to eat a frog, you must eat a frog with eggs in it. So if you are going to be a director or a producer for hire, then I must be paid quite a lot of money.
Wow, absolutely. Chike, as you work in the festival space, I want to know from the festival perspective whether you are able to also assist with distribution and how do you help filmmakers? So, I mean, you've just finished your festival. It's been extremely successful. Filmmakers are always excited about being there. What then is either the post-festival, you know, celebration around distribution? Does that happen? And talk to me a little bit about Netflix and all these other distributors.
Yeah. Wow, this is a packed question, but yeah. Let me see how I can break this down. I think what Sister Koliswa just talked about now, and you know, in her first observation, in terms of what I would call where your passion meets purpose, you know, and as a storyteller, as a filmmaker, I think it's important when she talks about delayed gratification. And I think if you're in this business with a clear sense of what it is that you're looking to do, what your mission is, so to speak, what is your purpose, and you're doing this because this is what you believe you're called to do, it does help. It does help you along the way on that journey, because there are so many valleys, and once in a while there's a little bump here and there, particularly in the genre of documentary filmmaker. Filmmaking in itself is a crazy business. I mean, it's really tough. It's a tough one, to, just like, a lot of businesses, but this is where, you invest money up front and you don't even know if it's all going to click. And if it does click, how long would it take? And so if you have investors that are pounding down your door, trying to get their money back, there's so much. I mean, I've produced quite a number of films, and I invest in films personally. And so I know what that looks like. When we founded the festival, and what we do with our film festival, coming straight to your question, is our festival, yes, we curate films and we present films. And then in the course of the festival, we bring people into spaces where they can get to see the talent that Africa has. And we do a lot of, facilitation for filmmakers, because oftentimes when people talk about investment in films or distribution, if you will, they're always looking to the big names, so to speak. Some you've already mentioned. But if you really think about it, for somebody like me that has been in this space for quite a bit, and I travel around the African continent, and my family is still there. I mean, I'm still very much who I am. And so I understand that for a young filmmaker, for instance, $20,000 US, $50,000 US, investing in that for their next project will make a great deal of difference. And so rather than try to, root the young filmmaker to start pounding on Disney and Paramount Pictures, what's the purpose of that? When they can come to my film festival, and maybe 2 or 3 people can easily write their check for them. You know what I mean? And then they can get on with their lives. And so what we do is really meeting the filmmaker at the point of need and at the point where it makes sense. And so some filmmakers come, and we don't promise this. I know this is being broadcast, but one thing we never do is to blab about, come to our film festival, you get this, you get that. But what we do is we create that space. We've had filmmakers, that come to us with shorts, and then they talk about their work and what they're working on, or filmmakers that come and they come back 2-3 years later with a feature, or they come with a feature film, and during the talk back, we always ask them the question, how much did it cost you to make this film? What are you looking to do? What are you working on next? And we have seen amazing things happening right after they walk off the stage, and somebody walking up to them to say, really? You made that film for $10,000? What are you looking to do next? And these are people within our spheres of influence that are always looking and interested in working with filmmakers. The other thing we do, which we've done very successfully, is when a filmmaker comes to our film festival, we call them, they become an alumni of our film festival. And they have, in fact, the ones that just finished this year, they are now class of 2020, and they already have a very active WhatsApp group that we call our class of 2020. And I can tell you, all through these years, we have seen amazing collaborations, and we have them engaged, sometimes monthly meetings. They lead the charge, we facilitate it. We're seeing Nigerian filmmakers connecting at our film festival with people from Egypt, from Morocco, from Sudan, from South Africa, and they're beginning to work together. Even with the diaspora focus that we now have, spotlight we have with Brazil, with Haiti, with Jamaica, we are making these connections for our filmmakers, and we keep them connected. When we get opportunities, such as some of the things we have on our docket as we speak, because we are close to some of these spaces that we talk about. I try not to use specific names, But yes, I get calls and say, Chike, I'm looking for content. Who do you have on deck? I'm looking for content that speaks to A, B, C, D. Do you have anything there? And sometimes it might be a film from 3 years prior or 2 years prior. I get on the phone right away. I call the filmmaker, or I go into their WhatsApp group because they have class of 17, class of 18. I just post it there, said, somebody's looking for so, please let me know. And immediately, and as we speak, we have a couple of deals waiting to be finished just based on these types of relationships. And so, you know, our role is not just to bring a filmmaker, show their film and, you know, send them off with an award, or in that case, no, we want to make sure that there's some sense of a pathway to the next thing, a pathway to supporting the filmmakers as they develop and move along their journey. And even if it's just, you know, if we're not able to provide funding, if script workshopping, I mean, there is a whole range of stuff that we provide to our filmmakers. And then quickly, and I will shut up, I mean, a couple of, you know, prior to COVID, 2 festivals ago, we had the president motion picture, music and sound for Paramount at our film festival. And he spent a whole weekend with us. And so we had him in a space with our filmmakers. They were just talking. I mean, there was nothing. He was right there having a full-fledged conversation with all the filmmakers, and they were laughing and cracking up. And there was nothing about motion picture sound and music that they didn't ask him. He still is the president of the, you know, Paramount Studios motion picture sound and music. And so there was nothing. 4 years, 10 years of film school wouldn't teach you a lot of the nuggets he was giving them on a practical level. And he saw their films too. We didn't just come as he was there wearing t-shirts, seeing different films, talking to filmmakers all over the place, sharing little things with them. So, and then we took filmmakers to Adobe Studios, Adobe World Headquarters, which is a few minutes from us. And they played around the space and talked to the people. They had lunch at YouTube World Headquarters, and they were talking face to face with the people at YouTube, and they were sharing with them how to monetize on their platform and some of the things that you might not be aware of. And because now they were there in the space and they were asking questions, getting right answers and that type of thing. And so we take advantage of the fact that we're within that ecosystem of Silicon Valley, where Netflix is right here, Adobe is here, YouTube is here, everybody is right here. And so when filmmakers come, we connect them, because these are human beings. I mean, some of our kids and their kids go to school and, you know, they don't have 10 heads. They're still human beings that work there. So we bring them, you know, to talk to our filmmakers and have our filmmakers develop relationships. And but that's what we do. We try to facilitate more than presenting the films. What happens, like you're asking, after the festival, even before the festival, we work with the filmmakers how to prep themselves so that they can be ready to take advantage of anything that might come up when they're here.
I think that is so important. The currency that you offer, which sometimes is more than rands and cents and dollars and naira, whatever that might be, because to have that, as you say, it's other nuggets. You can't pay for it, and you could never put a fee towards it. As we close, I'd like you to just think about your closing statement around film as a business, broadcasting as a business. How do we pivot? What do we do? How do we make sure that African storytelling, the narrative thereof, as you already said, Chike, because people have such a warped view of who we are. And then when they see us sitting like this, they get shocked because they like to put us in a box that is presentable to them. But in your closing remarks, and I would start with you, Sis Koliswa, you have continuously pushed the envelope. You continuously work under the most difficult circumstances with the very limited budgets, but you push, you plod, and this wonderful project now that you've actually linked with the university, with the Nelson Mandela Bay University, where we look in other spaces to be able to take our content, to be able to open up minds, to do the work that we do. So in your closing remarks, madam, you're on mute.
For as long as Black people, Black rich people are not interested in funding things that we are doing, for as long, because you see, film, it's celluloid, it can last 100 years. It's art. So for as long as our people, whether it's Motsepe, whether it's Dangote, whether it's Black people, as long as they are not investing in our stories, why are you putting pressure on the BBC, CNN, Paramount to tell the real African story? Yes, you can put pressure on them because Black numbers are a lot. So we are making the money as Black people, right? So even if you look at the Netflix platform, you look at Black people who are consuming that content. So we can push from that end to say that you need to invest in Black content, movies and everything. But for as long as our own rich people are not actually seeing this as a game changer, because this is not just about making money. This is about educating, informing. We need to shift the narrative, and films and images are powerful. But if Black people don't invest, if African countries don't make broadcasters strong because people deserve to get good programming, then actually, frankly speaking, nothing, diddly squat, nothing is going to move.
Thank you so much for saying this, because you just took it right off. And I will just, add a little bit to that, because the whole notion of always having to run to someone else for affirmation has really created a problem for us as people of African ancestry, whether we're on the continent or outside of the continent. But it came from somewhere, and we do understand that. But it's time we stopped making those excuses and begin to own and understand who we really are. Because the notion that if it's white, it's all right or better, when and until that changes, gratification or affirmation from the Netflixes. I mean, the power of the African ancestry people across the world connecting with each other and being together, we are going to find that we have so much money, so much resources that we don't need anybody else, And so we have to figure out a way to bring this education to our own people, the people that have the wealth and the resources. Because ultimately, those in government that we are hoping will create the enable environment are human beings themselves. And if their brains are already checked out, that's why in a lot of our countries, the heads of state will have a cough. They'll fly to the white man's land to go get it treated, because they believe, and they get there, and somebody that looks like them is treating them as a medical doctor over there, and the money they used to go there is more than enough to build a clinic that they can use in their homeland. So there's that sense, that warped sense of it has to be over there for it to be better. So it's only when my film gets into some big festival over there that I feel acknowledged. It's only when Netflix gets my film and all of that. Because, and I tell people, yes, Netflix is in Africa, but Netflix is not there for charity. They are there to make money, tons of it. If not today, tomorrow they will. And so own your copyright, own your intellectual property. But we also, as Africans, need to begin to figure out a way to deconstruct the colonial mentality that is affecting the people that are in leadership, in power, and that people that have wealth, so they can begin to understand truly why it is important to hold on and have us tell our stories ourselves. Because if you don't, somebody else will, and somebody else is already telling it. And the future generation will never forgive us if we cannot hold on to our stories and tell it ourselves. We're going to be back here, or our great-grandchildren will be here in some kind of forum talking about the same thing, and it makes no sense. So that in itself is, in my opinion, is the key to making sure that our storytellers are empowered. We need to figure out a way to start deconstructing this colonial mentality. It is killing us in all ramifications.
Nadia, your closing remarks.
It's just great listening to these wonderful filmmakers. Nice to see Xolisa again. Absolutely. I mean, it's time for, concerted effort around investment, around funding, and I think that rings true for all of us. I think although we have in South Africa small funders like the NFVF and others, it certainly is not enough. I love the point you're making, Xolisa, around where the huge business funders are and where they're sitting and how they don't value the creative arts and the cultural heritage, the kind of push for local stories, our culture, etc. And I think that's a huge challenge. And I think that, 26 years into our democracy, we've been doing this work for more than 25 years, and now people are finally catching up with where we ought to be. And that's really, really quite sad that it's taken so long. The kind of decolonization conversations, conversations around our local heritage, our culture, our language, children, et cetera, et cetera. We've been singing these songs for decades. Finally, people are catching up. What's happening, of course, is because there's so many platforms, there's so many opportunities, because things have become so globalized. And as I said, with online platforms, you can literally, you're doing the show right now that can broadcast everywhere. Things have changed, things have shifted. There are more opportunities, but it's got to do with investment and critically the passion that you have and why you're doing what you do, and who that audience is, and how you're able to get the marketing machinery behind that. Regrettably, that's still the issue. Even these online platforms, how do you start pushing the interest and getting people, because we're fighting for screen time, we're fighting for audiences. And again, we're dealing with huge inequalities where some have so much, they sit and sleep with a funnel down their mouths, chewing up all this content, and others have nothing. They don't have it in all languages, they don't have it in all genres, in all categories, etc. So I think the divides are so great. And I think that you're absolutely right, Chika, this kind of obsession with what's happening in America. We've been dealing with this forever. We've been obsessed with what is happening on our continent. We've been obsessed with the African diaspora and collaboration and co-production. It's just taken a very long time for people to get there. And the work has to continue. Festivals have to continue. Connections have to continue. But ultimately, it's the question of who's telling the story, from whose perspective, to whom, for what purpose. The issues around really truly understanding who we are, where we are right now in 2020. Your class of 2020 is historic. The time when the entire world stood still dealing with a global pandemic. The stories that will be told today, all these platforms are going to go into a capsule for generations to come to say, this is when the whole world stood up and dealt with issues like racism, sexism, all sorts of phobias. This is the time when young people took to the streets and said, enough, regardless of what this pandemic's doing to us, our stories have to be told and we have to be heard. So I think it's great time, a great opportunity to really reinvest and to look inward again. And to the points made earlier, if global companies, and this is the thing about globalization, we're dealing with it right now. Our platforms are having to compete directly with external platforms. We're competing. Revenues are coming from outside. Funding is going outside of our country. There's extraction happening. How do we turn that? How do we start looking at policies, regulation that start investing directly into South Africa and Africa? So great conversation. I'm sorry that I connected so late, but wonderful. And Chike, well done, excellent. I know that Xolisa had to leave, but she's always so wonderful and inspiring. And when you love and you have the passion, it's fantastic. You can do no wrong. So yay.
Well, that's a wonderful way to end the show. Thank you so much, Chike, for staying awake. You can go to bed now. Our day has just started. Thank you, Nadia, as always, succinct and clear. Thank you and goodbye, good night. Enjoy your day. Bye.
All right, take care.